Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park, and I hope you've been having a good week, Jamae, because we got some fire coming up.
Lots of intensity.
Lots of intensity. First little bit is a topic that I think we both understand may be a little bit sensitive. For Jamae and I, who grew up with religious backgrounds, we have been exposed to both sides of this argument. I have ultimately decided to talk about this subject, but I wanted to emphasize that I am not an expert. This topic is abortion. It is highlighted in little fires everywhere, especially as we get towards the end chapters. But also, I've stumbled across another podcast where I've listened to Rachel Lorenzo and Lux Alpatron, who share a lot of enlightening information. So, things that I've learned are abortion is not as dangerous or harmful as I used to think it was. There are a lot of safe ways to perform abortions, and with the proper resources, you should not have to rely on dangerous practices. My personal opinion isn't to force someone to change their thoughts, but I believe it's the right of others to choose what they feel is the right choice for them.
Absolutely, which is where I come from when I'm thinking about the different ways that people view abortion. Like, it's totally fine if you don't think abortion is right for you, but it's also totally fine if you believe that abortion is something that's okay for your body. But that's the thing, it's not about you forcing your belief on somebody, but allowing, like, especially in terms of our government, allowing access for everybody, because abortion is healthcare regardless.
Right. And the other thing I kind of learned was something that I might have known, but really, truly, I don't know if I believed in it until I listened to these women, and that there's no such thing as a right or wrong abortion. Whether it is to save the life of the mother due to medical complications or a personal decision that is just meant to better that person's life, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The banning of abortions is not only repealing laws that have been voted on previously, but is also going against the consensus of the American people.
Exactly.
Not only that, by banning abortions, it has led to physicians being threatened or some other physicians refusing to perform life-saving procedures like emptying the uterus.
Yeah, and so something that's been on the mind of so many people is how the repealing of Roe v. Wade has opened up the banning of abortion. So not all states have banned abortions, but many states who have had laws ready for the banning of abortions if Roe v. Wade and when Roe v. Wade was repealed is unfortunately where we're at today.
Right. So the only thing that I know how to do, because like I said, I'm not the expert, is I would like people to be connected to things and other people who are experts.
Yes.
So websites that can help connect you to a local physician or help get you medications delivered to your door are aidaccess.org and plancpills.org.
Other resources, if you'd like to anonymously search for support based on your location, the type of abortion you need, and accessibility, is ineedana.com. If you also want to look for abortion funds that are local and grassroots driven, you can find that through the National Network of Abortion Funds, which can be found at abortionfunds.org. Here is where you can find support or seek help from local abortion funds, where they can give you either access or funding to access abortions. And if you're in the Oregon, Washington, Idaho area, our local abortion fund is Northwest Abortion Access Fund.
Right. And if you're looking for a website to help guide you through that process, one of the ones are abortionpillinfo.org. If you're caught in the legal system with this process, look up Lawyering Through Reproductive Justice. So overall, this is something that's not new. People of marginalized communities have required these resources for a long time. These have been running organizations that are well practiced and knowledgeable. So it's not something that I can speak well to. It's not something I'm well diverse in, but there are many resources out there that I think if you are someone or know someone that can use these resources and this information, these are places that can maybe even just help start the search.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So that was super deep, but so that we can
go into a higher vibration.
Yes. So that we can go into a higher vibration with a clean feeling. Let's go into our recommendation for the week.
All right. So, our recommendation for the week is called Blue Land. They are a certified B Corp that's founded and led by Sarah Paijiu. This company focuses on addressing the plastic problem that we have, especially in products and packaging, particularly with single-use packaging. Blue Land makes eco-conscious products convenient, effective, and affordable, and they're really well known for their tablets. What Steven and I used to use were their hand soaps, which were great. I love the smells, but if you don't have the time to wait for it to dissolve, it might not be right for you, which it wasn't right for us.
Also, we found a local company in Oregon that distributes it without bottles, so we're also still working on the environment.
Absolutely. Quick tip: if you do buy the hand soaps, refill them at night, right before you go to sleep, so in the morning it's already ready for you. Other things that we loved were the detergent tablets, but again, we weren't able to keep that because it's best for bigger washing machines with bigger loads, and unfortunately we downsized our washing machine, which meant our loads were smaller and the soap didn't dissolve completely, but it's still great. And like Steven said, our alternative is to continue using our local eco-conscious shop. However, there is one thing that we still use with Blue Land, and it's their dishwasher tablets. I think they are amazing, especially because there are no plastic films. For the pods, whether they're dishwashing or detergent pods that have the plastic films that dissolve, when it dissolves, it still is plastic. And so that goes into our oceans, that goes into our water filtration systems, which then means that we are ingesting those plastics when we drink our water. So you can find them at blueland, BLUELAND.com.
Yep, and that is our recommendation for the week. Okay, and so we hit the final part of this book.
Yes.
Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. We just finished the last 3 chapters.
Yes.
Is it 17, 18?
4. The last 4 chapters.
4 chapters, and there is a lot to talk about.
So much content. But as a recap, what happened so far is that we learned Mia's life story, from how she started to enjoy photography, into her going to college and finding Pauline Hawthorne, who fostered her artwork, and then finds the Ryans and has that diverging road of whether to give the baby to the Ryans or to keep the baby. And as we know, she still has Pearl. And it also brings us to Lexie recovering from abortion. We learned that the hearing between Bibi Chow and the McCullows for custody over May Ling is a very rough subject for everyone, including the judge. And we've also seen parallels between Bibi and Mia's story in terms of keeping the babies that were born through their bodies versus the Ryans and the McCullows, who are trying to adopt children because they've wanted them for so long but just couldn't have them.
Right. So let's talk about Lexie and Mia and the post-abortion, the post-clinic, because one thing that we learned kind of in these last 4 chapters is a shift in a couple of these relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
So Lexie has gone to Mia. Mia has become this motherly figure to Lexie.
Yeah.
For caring, for comfort, for guidance. And it's something that I think Lexie has now valued. Not only has it helped her to get past this event in her life, but it's also been something that's changed her perspective on not only her situation, but also it's made her look at BB's situation slightly differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Mia not only caring for her, she also gave her space, which I think Lexie really needed. And not that we can predict, but I would imagine that if Elena knew about this abortion, she would have a totally different reaction. Yeah.
Later, we find out that she does learn about some kind of abortion.
Yes, and we'll get to that.
Yes.
So another thing in this shift in relationship is when Pearl realizes that there's this sense of reversal, and how Pearl feels like Lexie is now Mia's daughter, where in the beginning of the book, it felt as though Mia felt replaced by Elena in becoming Pearl's mother. Yeah, so it's that mirror effect.
Right. So then let's continue on with Pearl, because she is still in this relationship with Trip. Now, one thing that was really interesting to me is there is this moment with Trip and Pearl where they're lying in bed together. And they go through this conversation which seems very genuine. For me, Trip, up till this point, has been this very jockish, very player, play is gonna play kind of thing. But in this moment when he talks to Pearl, it kind of shows that he may be a better person than I thought. It shows that he has curiosity about his life after high school. The other big thing that kind of hit me was that he talks about why his relationship with Moody isn't quite the relationship that he expected it to be, and he's confused about why it's not as close as other brothers are.
Yeah, totally. And I had a different opinion with Trip, even before I finished reading it the first time. I felt like there was some kind of softness with Trip, and I think I recognized that in this character because he reminded me of some people that I know who has that very jockish, very happy-go-lucky type of personality on the outside, but they have a sensitivity on a one-on-one basis. But yes, I definitely think it was interesting that he and Moody had such a big gap between them, especially since they're close in age. And I don't know if that makes a difference.
Right. But they weren't that far separated, because what we find in the book is that right outside the window of this bed scene, there is a lurker. So Moody goes home after school, finds out that Pearl's not there. Finds out that Izzy is at home.
Right. And that Pearl lied to him, saying that Mia needed her help, but since Izzy's home, who is always there to help, then he puts things together.
So let's ride this tornado of feels, and it puts him right in front of the Warrens' house, where Trip and Pearl are engaging in activities. So then this leads to the eventual confrontation of Moody and Pearl.
Yeah. And I want to just add in how #creepy, #obsessed Moody is, and that he is not necessarily watching them, but he is looking at Pearl's window this whole time.
Right.
And waits for them to come out of the house and leaves when he finds them.
Right. So I feel like I get Moody in this instance. I don't agree with the actions that he takes and the things that he says in the very near future of this book. But I get this feeling of loss and this feeling of hurt. I think for me, and what I feel in Moody, is that sometimes as very young people, we get swept up in our feels, and sometimes when we're in friendships, we take this side of possessiveness and say, hey, like, we've been hanging out a long time, so clearly we're in a relationship, when that's never been Pearl's vibe.
Which is a fallacy even in like our youth. Like I definitely understand where you're coming from, where I would be in a friendship and it felt very giggle.
Right.
And for those of you who don't recognize the Filipinx term, giggle means like all the lovey-dovey feels.
Right.
And so I totally understand that feeling of, oh, we're really close. Right. Oh, they look like they like me. Oh, so that means that there's a romantic stake in this relationship. However, that doesn't mean that that's what it is, and that's across the board.
Right, because Pearl never established this kind of relationship with Moody.
Exactly.
So then it is not okay for
Right.
Moody to then say, I guess you don't mind being the latest of his conquest. I just thought you had more respect for yourself than that.
Yuck.
I just thought you were smarter than the sluts that agreed to do it with him.
No.
But it is okay for Pearl to say, I'm not a conquest. You know what? I'm the one that started it with him.
Yes, Pearl. Yes. Way to stand up for yourself.
So, I mean, once again, I get Moody. That should never be the response.
Right.
The word slut in any term is just so derogatory and just so
Yes.
unnecessary.
Absolutely.
But even more than that, the intention behind what he was trying to do, which is hurt her
Right.
because he felt hurt,
Right.
was so unnecessary.
Right.
And this now severs that bond, any relationship that he has with Pearl.
Exactly. And I mean, I empathize in feeling betrayed because Pearl lied to him for months.
True.
So I understand that from a friendship perspective.
Right.
But like you said, there's never a time where it's okay to slut shame anybody. It's never okay to name call your friends or anybody for that matter. I mean, he's young, but he could have just named his feelings.
And he could have done the thing that he did after this without saying all those words.
Yeah.
Also, wait, no, I take that back. So what he does and what he decides to do is tear up Pearl's notebook, but the way he finds it is by going through her bag.
Ugh.
So he does a lot of bad things.
Yeah. Invasion of privacy.
Yeah. So this eventually comes back to us later, but talking about another relationship that also has changed
Yes.
is Lexie and Brian.
Yes.
Because this is when Lexie comes back to Brian after going through the abortion. It seems like some time has passed because within this discussion that they have, Brian does mention that he's made a lot of attempts within their relationship to kind of keep it going and giving her space.
Right.
But what happens with them?
So Lexie asks for more space and Brian he says a not great thing. He notices how distant Lexie has been and absolutely gets angry, and in his anger asks her, "Are you PMSing?"
Right.
Ugh.
Which is so, like, this is such big irony because her PMSing would have meant that she was never pregnant.
Right.
Her coming back after an abortion and for him to say that she's PMSing shows, one is he doesn't know what's going on in her life, but also that very ignorant thought of the only way that Lexie can have emotions is by her having hormonal changes, or it's just a very immature, very teenage boy thing from what I remember as a teenage boy. It's a very teenage boy thing to say.
Unfortunately, it's not only teenage boys who make those comments.
Right.
And like anytime someone uses the "are you PMSing" or "are you on your period" type of jab, I feel is like super immature and just doesn't understand life.
So quick recap of the last few things we said. Don't call people sluts. Don't accuse people of PMSing just because you think that they're having emotions.
Right, exactly.
All right.
Ugh.
So those are some changes that we noticed.
Yes.
But one bigger change that's starting to come up is now the story with BB Chow and the McCullochs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been in this hearing. We've seen them both in court.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're sitting here waiting for the verdicts.
Yes. And not only are we sitting here and waiting for the verdict, we also see that Elena and Linda are waiting for the hearing to end by Judge Reinbeck giving a decision, but the decision is taking a longer time than they'd expected.
Who do you think the baby belongs to?
So I've always thought that BB is May Ling's mother, regardless. And I used to think that the book was impartial, but this second time around, I see that Celeste uses the terms BB's daughter, or May Ling is looking for her mother in reference to BB, which I think was a very clever way to plant these little seeds without actually forthright saying BB is the mother.
Right. Just ways that Celeste is kind of implanting her opinion into this piece without being
like super pushy about it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Elena's talking to Linda, and Elena is kind of pushing Linda to say, this is your last opportunity.
Right.
What do you have? We need something.
Right. And so Linda speculates that BB was getting bigger and that she threw up at one point and then all of a sudden lost all of this weight, which essentially means that she was alleging that BB might have had an abortion during this process.
Right, which is actually, in fact, and Celeste, I really appreciate that Celeste went through this story the way that she did.
Yes.
Because she explains it. Like,
yes.
These rumors that she threw out there, you may have heard this stuff, but let me tell you what's actually happening.
Yes.
So BB's getting bigger because she's stressed out. Her work is busy, so her eating habits aren't great. She's eating Oreos, French fries, pork rinds. So she does gain 15 pounds in a month. But then what happens is she gets sick. So while she's with the social worker, she does end up throwing up, but that's because of food poisoning.
Right.
And guess what? After food poisoning, you don't want to eat. You're still stressed. So the way you deal with stress sometimes is just not to eat anymore. And guess what? You lose all the weight.
Yep.
So, yes, Linda is right in a way in terms of what's actually happening, but completely wrong in how she's reading this and just so rude to even go through that process.
Yeah.
I think at one point she even says, like, BB can always have another baby. It's like, what are you talking about?
Elena says she can always have another, which is like a really ignorant thing to say about anybody.
Well, it also shows how much they undermine the value of this child.
Exactly.
Like, they're using this child as an object. They're not looking at this child as
a person
or an individual or somebody's actual, like, baby and like this thing that you're trying to raise.
Right. It's not like you created this cookie and you can make another cookie later.
Right.
It's May Ling is a person. BB is also a person, and they both have a connection, and they both have emotions and feelings. So
these white women rile each other up. And because they're talking about abortions, guess what Elena does?
She goes digging.
Yes. And how does she dig?
Illegally.
Yes. So she apparently has this friend, Elizabeth Manuel, who she went to college with, and Elena saved her from her loneliness and her emptiness.
And made her a more confident and more forthright person.
Which eventually gets her this job as the director of
the abortion clinic.
Right. And so now Elena calls up, quote unquote, Betsy and is asking her for help to see these files, which is completely illegal.
Yes, it goes against HIPAA.
HIPAA.
Okay.
So what she does is she calls up Elizabeth, asks her to go to lunch, and is pretty much being very upfront with the fact that she wants this information.
Right. She just wants a peek. You don't even have to be in the room.
Yeah. But so one of the first things that I noticed was that Elena doesn't call Elizabeth. She calls her Betsy.
Which is her nickname from college when she was first this meek, more humble, more shy person. And by doing that, I feel and I interpret that Elena is trying to bring her back into that spot and saying, hey, remember where you were before I helped you, Betsy?
Right. And it's also such a demeaning form is when you not use nicknames as a loving characteristic, but as a way of bringing someone down.
Yes.
We've seen it in a lot of history. If you remember the depiction of Game of Thrones, you remember Ramsay and his whole thing.
Yeah.
So nicknames, although can be very loving, very thoughtful, can also be used as a weapon, which is what I think we see here.
Yes.
The other thing that happens is Elena is clearly using Elizabeth in this situation. She is using the past and how she's been influencing Elizabeth, talking about how she got a husband and a child by trusting me. She got this job by trusting me. And I think what Elizabeth later says is, quote unquote, she has been keeping a running tally.
Yes. That's Elena's character. She knows that she's quote unquote helping people, and so by helping them she has these like little tokens of investment, and she hopes to withdraw at a later date, and this for Elizabeth is the withdrawal date.
Right. Does Elizabeth give it to her?
No, she puts her foot down and says, I'm not gonna do it. Unfortunately, Elizabeth gets called out, and Elena sneaky behind the desk, and after closing one of the windows, notices that there is a list of the records and reads it through, looking for BB's name, but not finding BB's name.
Right. And I feel like the worst part in that, though, is Elena pretty much saying that Elizabeth changed her mind. She allowed me to do this. That's why she stepped out the room. And so clearly I can see the laptop and just that arrogance, that privilege that she constantly shows is just astounding.
Bro.
But I love that Celeste put this in here, put this little snippet of a story that she really didn't need to go into this much detail with, but shows Elena's
true intent and true character.
Yeah, in just such a short bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so Elena's looking through the list. She doesn't find BB.
But instead, she finds Pearl's name.
Right. And finding Pearl's name sparks her up to then go to the Winslow Road rental.
Yes, and just as a recap for those of us who don't remember, Pearl's name is there not because Pearl got an abortion, but because Elena's daughter, Lexie, was the one who did it and used Pearl's name for it.
Right. And so she sees Pearl's name, assumes that Pearl... Well, I mean, kind of that's the assumption I would make. If I saw Pearl's name, I would think Pearl gave the abortion. Or
got the abortion.
But assumes that it's Pearl and Moody. Right.
Which everyone assumed that Pearl and Moody were in a romantic relationship because of how close they were.
Except Trip. But, okay, so then Elena rushes to the Winslow Road residence, goes through the door that is unlocked. The reason it's unlocked, or maybe not the primary reason, but the one that
the reasons.
Yeah, and the one that's written in the book quite often is for Mia to take in the children, take in Izzy.
To have that open space and that safe zone.
Right. So Elena just walks herself right in because she owns this home, quote unquote owns this home. So clearly... There's no problem here. There's no rental rights that are ever in place. And then goes and confronts Mia.
Yes. And pretty much tells her off and tells her that she thought her past was in the past. And Elena says that she now knows that Mia is not a great mother.
Right.
And that she took the Ryan's child from them. Right. And essentially is just shooting fire at her without any regard to Mia, essentially, and like not even like thinking about Mia as a person, but Mia as someone to talk down to.
Right. And I mean, she pretty much just vomits out all this information.
Yeah.
Like all of Mia's personal stories, all her past, the stuff that she didn't want to share to Pearl.
Yeah.
Elena just is like, I know you did this. Yeah.
Oh.
And then she goes on to kick Mia and Pearl out of the Winslow Road residence, which honestly, like, Mia doesn't really have a problem with. She's like, okay, like, and I think one thing that Elena even does is she blames Pearl. Like, I think Mia is like, what's going on?
Yeah, why are you doing this?
Yeah, and then Elena's like, ask your daughter.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
Yeah, so one is the reason you're kicking them out is not even right.
Right.
But two is the next mistake you're going to make, which is you're going back home where Moody is, and then you go rush into his room too.
Yes.
And you confront him about this abortion.
In which he sets the record straight, because he says, you're talking to the wrong son.
Right.
Which blows her mind.
Right. Pretty much tells her, hey, your other son, Trip, is the one sleeping with Pearl. Yeah. But then, as this whole conversation's happening, where Moody finds out that Pearl is quote-unquote pregnant.
Which she's not.
Which she's not. Elena finds out that
Pearl's with Trip.
Right. Someone who had been listening to music turns that music down
and has been listening to the whole conversation. And that person is Izzy, who no one notices.
Right. I kind of like throughout this whole book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just goes unseen. But I don't know. She does something that's a little bit different than how Elena handles every situation.
Right. Elena makes conclusions and shoots fire at those conclusions.
Right.
While instead, Izzy takes the information that she hears and she confirms it with the people that she thinks is part of the situation.
Right.
So she goes and talks to Lexie first, because she knows that Pearl didn't have an abortion and noticed that Lexie wasn't feeling well. So she goes directly to Lexie on foot, which is awesome of her.
Right.
She goes on foot, confronts Lexie, asks her if she has an abortion, gets the confirmation, and then now realizes that Pearl needs to know what's happening.
Right.
So while all of this is happening, Izzy keeps trying to look for Pearl, keeps missing her, and the reason that she's missing her is because Mia is taking her out of school.
Right.
And trying to pack things up.
Right, getting ready to leave town because that's what Miss Richardson, Elena, wanted.
Yes.
But then to continue with Izzy's story, we see this little story pop up, which has popped up before. Now, earlier in the book, Izzy had an incident with a teacher in which she felt like someone else was wronged and she wanted to stand up for that person. And so she does that big old school prank that just destroys like
the locks.
Yeah, and like completely changes the school.
Yes.
In this scenario, she believes that Mia and Pearl were wronged. She believes that they were treated unfairly the whole time.
By her family.
By her own family, exactly.
Yes.
So then she takes matters into her own hands.
Yes, and she does this because she remembers two different things from Mia.
Right.
First, what are you going to do about it? And then second, Mia's parting words to Izzy was talking about how in prairies, sometimes they have to burn everything to start new.
Right. So the exact quote is, sometimes you need to start over from scratch and burn everything to the ground.
Yes. So, the following morning, thinking that everyone was at their own Saturday activity, in which they were not, Mrs. Richardson was not, but Izzy, thinking that everyone was safe and away from home, pours gasoline in her siblings' bedrooms and lights a fire.
Right. So this then brings us back to the front of the book. It's that first image that we see. It's that circle of things that started us off and things that have brought us here now.
And closing the loop.
Yep. And it is this house that is burning on fire.
Yes, absolutely.
So the kids are just hanging out by a car for some reason. Like, they don't care that everything's burnt to the ground. They're like...
Which is privilege. It's privilege to watch your home be burnt down and know, like, hey, it's fine.
Yeah, like, I think it said, like, Tripp's just, like, on the hood of the car, just, like, chilling. Like, that's... Anyways, crazy.
Yeah.
And then no one knows where Izzy is.
Yeah.
They're just kind of even brushing it off to the side, like
we'll find her.
Yeah, because it's this invisible person. Like, they never really saw her as a sister, more just as somebody, a side character,
or somebody in their home that lives with them.
Right. There is one person that's wondering where she is, which is Elena.
Right. She does fume and is angry, and eventually she has this more like a reckoning when they decide to go to the Winslow Road home.
Right. Which, so in the meantime, what's happening at the Winslow Road home is that Mia and Pearl are packing up. They're getting ready to leave. But as they're doing so, Pearl is trying to understand what is going on, because she was promised by Mia that this would be the place that she stays.
Right.
She gets into her first ever relationship. She finds friends and people that she can entrust and feel like she can spend time with.
Right.
And now all that's being stripped away from her, and she doesn't know why.
Right.
So this then begins that conversation that Mia, I don't know if she has to have with Pearl, but she eventually does, and it's a conversation that Pearl's been long awaiting.
Right. And what we see in the story and what we know happens after the story is that Mia gives Pearl enough information, but never the whole story. And it comes in drips and drabs, is what the book says, in which they would pass a yellow house, or they would see children running up a hillside, and Mia would start off with, hey, did I ever tell you about a time, and then talks more about the story. And even if Pearl doesn't get the whole thing, she feels like she gets all the pieces that matter to her.
Right. So now Pearl has a better picture of her past. Mia asks Pearl, hey, do you want to go see the Ryans? Pearl's not sure yet. Mia also asks, do you want to go see your grandparents, the Wrights? I think this sets up the story of where they're going, because after this, we really don't hear much about them.
Right, we don't follow them.
Right, which I love that ending. It leaves something to the imagination.
Right.
But one thing that's not left to the imagination is this envelope that Mia places on the desk for
the Richardsons to find.
Exactly.
As their parting gift.
And it's so juicy because, okay, before we say what the things are, this parting gift is something that, so Pearl asks, hey, isn't this, like, do you want to leave this behind?
Right.
Like, isn't this belong to you?
Right.
And Mia says,
some pictures belong to the person who took them, and some belong to the person inside them.
Right. So she leaves these pictures, which are individualized for each family member. So because I love them so much, and I think also one thing that Celeste does in this instance is it verifies who Mia is as a person and as an artist.
Yes.
Because this whole time we're told that Mia is an artist. We see that she has this relationship with Pauline Hawthorne. We're told at her brilliance and her prowess and how she's seen by her neighbor. Like all this stuff leads us to believe that her work is really good.
Yeah.
But we don't really ever see her work.
Not in totality. We've seen the Spider Woman, but we see that through Elena's eyes, not through Mia's.
Right. with the storytelling of these individual photos, it's just so beautiful, and you can imagine it. Anyways, so let's get into it. So first gift that she leaves behind is for Lexie. Now, what she leaves for her is the discharge forms that she had from the abortion. She cut them into strips, made them into a net, and it's carrying a rock.
Yes.
A rock that is quote-unquote bulging, not breaking. And it shows the weight that Lexie has to carry with her after making her decision.
Yes. And it shows that she has the strength to carry it since it's not going to break.
Exactly.
And then with Trip, his picture or his photo is of his hockey chest pad where Mia has drilled holes into them, planted seeds or scattered seeds, watered it for weeks until it started to sprout. And in this photo, it shows that even though Trip may have a hard exterior, that there is softness and sensitivity that can grow from him.
Right. And what she says, quote unquote, is it's all right to be vulnerable, all right to take time and see what grows.
Yes.
So then Moody's is a flock of miniature origami birds with wrinkles. The reason why these wrinkles matter are these are the pages that he ripped from Pearl's notebook that we had discussed earlier. He had destroyed it, but Mia turns these strips into origami birds, puts them on a photo of sky like they're soaring to higher and better things, which is what she's hoping for Moody.
Yes, absolutely. And then there's the photo for Mr. Richardson, in which one of his collar stays, which is a metal collar stay, was rubbed with a magnet and is now spinning in water. And because of the long exposure, it doesn't show where the collar stay ends up, which then makes Bill Richardson wonder, where is he facing now?
Right. And I think the juiciest one is Miss Richardson, so Elena's. So it's this paper cutout that's turned into a bird cage that has almost exploded.
Yes.
So there's a big hole in it. It's made from newsprint, which Elena kind of recognizes as one of her stories, but can't really tell which one. But in the middle of this bird cage, she puts a single golden feather down, which is just very confusing to Elena and even confuses her more at the end.
Right. And we also know that Izzy, before burning down the house, went into the Winslow Road rental, saw these, and only took hers.
Right.
And her photo was of her favorite boot, cut up and with a shoestring formed on a sidewalk into a flower, to show that even with toughness, there is beauty, or even with hardness, there is beauty.
Right. And now, this seems like such a lovely gift. You're giving this beautiful artwork, but what Mia truly means to do is to create this deep-rooted storyline of, I think, how she sees the family. It is something that she says, these pictures are there now, but later on with more generations, they're gonna have to explain these pictures.
Right, it becomes like an heirloom of sorts.
Right. So this is left for them. It is left at the Winslow Road residence, the Winslow Road house, which now the Richardsons have to stay in because their house is burnt down. Very symbolic because Elena has always looked at the Winslow Road house as this place that she gives to those who are in need, gives to those who need help. And the irony of having to now stay in that house, someone who needs help, not just in her physical circumstance, but now she's lost her youngest daughter who she cared for so much. She later explains that she's in this feeling of not knowing what the birdcage really symbolizes. Is it her losing her daughter, which is that golden feather, or is it her having escaped the birdcage? Right.
She questions if she was the bird who escaped, or is she the cage that kept her daughter in?
There you go. Yes. So that kind of wraps up the whole story. Like, me and Pearl are kind of off. The Richardsons
are now in Winslow Road.
Right. Izzy is now off on this journey. They explain that she
is trying to look for Mia.
Right. She knows where the Wrights are. She knows where the Ryans are. So that leads that. But there's one more story, and that's the story of BB, May Ling, and the McCulloughs.
Yes. So unfortunately, Judge Rainbeck decides to give custody to the McCulloughs.
Right, which happens in just the craziest fashion.
Yeah,
like it's a phone call. Like, and the description is so brief in the book.
They only call, it seems like they only called the Richardsons, or they called the Richardsons first?
Maybe. I mean, they had to have called a lot of people, because a lot of people need to know.
Right.
Like, BB had to know.
Right.
But it just happened so briefly. Like, it was so nonchalant. But yeah.
So the decision is made. In the courtroom, when BB hears the decision, she just bursts out crying. And I totally understand where she's coming from. I mean, I don't have any children, but if I were told that my family member is going to be taken away from me forever without visitation, which I think is so cruel.
Right.
Like, how did Judge Rainbeck come to that conclusion? Like, let's just cut off all communication from BB.
Right.
So I wanted to point out the bailiff's kindness, that the bailiff, noticing that she was in distress, took her aside into a holding room, let her cry, gave her drinks, kept her attended to, and once she had calmed down, took her to a back area so that she didn't have to face the reporters, and paid for her taxi to take her wherever she wanted.
Right.
And I think
$20.
Right.
That's wild.
No, 40, because 2 20s.
Oh.
So it's like wherever she wants to go.
No, that's baller.
For real.
90s, like, $40?
For real. I'm like, dang, that is so much kindness, so much compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
And because BB speaks to Mia, and Mia, I don't remember exactly what Mia says to BB.
Well, BB feels like she gets permission from Mia.
Right.
To do this thing.
I think Mia says she will always be your child.
Yeah.
And to BB, she interprets that as permission to
dance. Just kidding.
That gives her permission to, at the end of that night, waiting until the lights go out in the McCullough's residence, to take May Ling.
Yep. Get that baby.
Yes.
Let's go. Where are we going to go?
China.
Canton, China.
Yes.
Let's get away from here.
For real.
Why are we going there? Because the McCulloughs would have to spend their entire life savings just to try to find them, because they ain't going to find them.
Yes.
And this is the disappearance of BB.
Yes.
Which, good for her.
For real.
We don't know what happens in the end. Another kind of ending that just kind of trails off.
Yes.
I like to think that great things happen, but that's left up to the reader.
Yeah.
If you're a terrible person, you think bad things happen to them. If you're a good person, you think good things happen to them. Just saying. But then it leads to, I don't know, Lisa McCullough's then eventually getting another baby from China.
Or they're trying to get another baby from China.
Well, they do get like a lead or something on another baby.
Yeah, Linda offhandedly says the odds of the baby's family trying to regain custody are almost nil, which is yuck.
Right. Anyways, they're trash. They're just trying to get more Chinese thing. I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
For real. The whole, like, white saviorism, as well as the privilege and the... Yeah. I don't know. It's all of that.
Honestly, I'm surprised they even know the difference. I wouldn't be surprised if they got like a baby from Vietnam and they're like, we got a Chinese baby. I don't know. Anyways, what are your final... Because that's kind of everything.
Yes.
That's the story.
Yes.
It's... I don't know. It was really good. But what are your final thoughts on the book?
My final thoughts are that I, once again, appreciate how Celeste uses the small details to build this huge story. Like, it doesn't have a fast pace, there are very few breaks, and the biggest break was with Mia's story, and even that didn't feel like too much.
Right.
So my highlights and the things that I appreciate the most are the subtleties and the closed loops. How she looped the fire with the Richardson's home,
Right.
how she looped Izzy, and how Elena had such a tight hold on Izzy and fearing her leaving, and then eventually Izzy does leave.
Right.
And the circle of BB and her story, starting off very despairing and losing her child, but regaining her child. So that was a circle that didn't come back to where it came from, but moved on to a different part.
Right. My personal experiences from this are that the characters that I thought would have bigger roles didn't. The characters that I thought would have lesser roles didn't. But like, so what I mean by that is I thought Izzy would be much more told in the story. Now, she had a massive role.
Oh, yeah.
But she wasn't really, like, mentioned often in this. She was just kind of scattered throughout.
Totally.
Same thing with Moody, is, like, he was the one that helped Pearl get initiated into the family.
Right.
But then just kind of jumped in and out of everything.
Right.
Trip ended up being, you know, like, a kind of highlighted character because of his relationship with Pearl. And the other big one was Mia. Like, we kept seeing her. We saw her as a background. What we did see was that when she gave those photos, it showed how much she actually knew everything.
Yeah, she was more of an omnipresent character almost.
Right, and not only that, but to pick up all these items, like the book, the hockey pad, the boot that got thrown away. Like, she was everywhere. Everything all at once, but without being noticed. Like, it was never in the story that, like, there was never a piece where it was like, oh yeah, and then Mia went out to the trash can.
No.
So I love that bit.
Yes.
But my highlight for this book is Ed frickin' Lim.
He was such a baller character.
He was, and he came in for such a short time.
Yes.
But we know who he is. We know he has a daughter. We understand how he raised his daughter. Like,
yes.
There was such big moments, and then for him to fight back in the way that he did,
absolutely,
shows that he struggles living in Ohio as being a person of color. Like, oh, Ed freaking Lim.
Yes.
Best character in the book for me.
Totally.
So, would you recommend this book?
Absolutely. It is so worth the hype. And I would recommend a second read too.
Yeah, I love this book. I'd also recommend it. But the other thing that we might recommend, which is a little surprise, I think we're going to try to do a watch along.
And by I think, we will.
We will. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to watch the show.
The Hulu series.
Right. I forget how many episodes it is, but what we'll do is then have an episode where we talk about the comparisons of the book versus and the show, maybe the characters, maybe the storyline. What did they choose to keep amid? Yeah, things that we maybe wouldn't have done, or I don't know.
Or things that we appreciated that they adapted.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the end of Little Fires Everywhere. It's the end of our second book. But we roll on to our third book. And what we're going to do is give you a little insight, a little guidance into what you might expect. And we're going to do that through the hint of jam.
So, here are our 3 hints for our next book club pick. Hint number 1. The author received the Academy of American Poets James Wright Prize. Hint number 2. This is a shorter chapbook of poetry. And hint number 3. It starts in a familiar place to untangle a messy, complex, and nuanced time during the LA riots in 1992.
Yeah, and so those are the 3 hints for our next book, which we'll introduce on our next episode. But for now, those are your hint of jam. So, stick with us. Let us know if you have any questions or comments, and you can do that by
emailing us at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D, @gmail.com, or DMing us while our DMs are still open on Instagram at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D.
Also, feel free to comment. Make sure to follow.
Yes.
Make sure to subscribe.
Yes.
We also have a website. It's asianbookclubpod.com. We'll also have our bookstore on there, which will show all the books that we're recommending, all the books that we're going to read. If you buy anything off the bookshop, it does help us out a little bit.
It keeps the lights on in Asian Book Club podcast.
Right. So make sure to book us next week. Same time, same place. Until then,
Bye.